Peashooter, the first plant you unlock in Plants vs Zombies 2, or any Plants vs Zombies game for that matter. It's the most basic plant in the game that you're meant to replace with better options as you unlock them. But what if we only used Peashooter and its variations for a whole run of Plants vs Zombies 2? No sunflowers, no walls, nothing. Only Peashooters. Will it be possible? Let's find out. This is the Plants vs Zombies 2 Only Peashooters challenge. Quickly before we start, here are the rules I've decided on. As usual, we can only use level 1 plants except Peashooter, which will be level 2 because we're forced to upgrade him at the start of the game. Power-ups and Zen Garden boosts are also banned. Any plant that is a Peashooter or closely related plant is allowed. For example, variants of Peashooter such as Repeater and pea-based plants such as Peanut. Also, we'll skip over levels that choose the plants for us, such as locked and loaded levels and conveyor belt levels, since obviously we have no control over the Peashooterage. Sun production levels will be completed with Peashooters and one sun producer so that they can be possible. Also, pre-planted plants on the lawn at the start of the level are fair game. Also, a quick thanks to ohai687, it's me 8 for the video idea. If you guys want to send over some video ideas to potentially be turned into full videos, feel free to drop a comment as well. With that out of the way, let's jump straight in. We blasted through tutorial days 1 through 5 with only Peashooter, besides day 2 where we were forced to place 3 sunflowers at the start of the level. Technically the sunflowers are pre-planted on the lawn since the first wave is only triggered after you've planted them, at which point the actual level begins. Just to be safe though, I put the sunflowers at the front of the lawn and let the zombies eat them immediately, so they didn't make too much of a difference to the overall level. Now onto ancient Egypt. Day 1 was straightforward with the regular Peashooter. Day 2 was meant to be the power-up introduction level, but sticking to my no power-ups rule, I managed to beat the level with only the pre-planted plants and placing Peashooters. Yeah, somehow the level designed to let you spam power-ups for free is possible without a single power-up. Nice. Day 3 was a breeze, partially due to the pre-planted cabbage pult and 2 sunflowers. It's actually annoying how many pre-planted plants there are in the modern ancient Egypt levels. The game just handholds so much in these early levels that it feels like the devs are playing the game for you. Day 4 was a conveyor belt level, so we played it as normal. Day 5 was another straightforward level with Peashooter. We unlocked iceberg lettuce, which would be great if we could actually use it. Day 6 was the Gargantua conveyor battle, so like Day 4, it was omitted from the challenge. Day 7 was easy peasy. I'm really sorry. Day 8 introduced tomb raisers, who are the first real threats of the challenge. This is because they're literally designed to counter Peashooters, encouraging the player to switch to alternatives such as cabbage pult that can shoot over tombstones. Slight problem though, we're stuck with Peashooter. I accounted for the abundance of tombstones by using my plant food to destroy them where necessary, beating the level. Day 9 and 10 were simple, and Day 11 was a locked and loaded level, meaning we can skip it. But just for fun I beat it with only Peashooter anyway since it was one of the given plants. Don't expect this in the later worlds though, they get really tough and not so fun for me, but fun for you guys as viewers to watch as I suffer an endless cycle of Peashooter torment. The next 3 days were clean sweeps with Peashooter. In Day 15 we had to protect the endangered sunflowers. Besides one close call with a pharaoh zombie, we did fine. On the other hand, days 16 and 17 were a return to mindless Peashooter spam. Day 18 was our first last stand level. Can you guess what strategy we used? Day 19 was yet again more Peashooter spam. We better unlock a new Peashooter soon or else this challenge is gonna get really stale. Oh, would you look at that? We unlocked Repeater, a direct upgrade to Peashooter. We're going to be using this guy a lot. Days 20, 21, and 22 all showed off Repeater's power. On day 23, however, we had our first loss because an explorer zombie burnt straight through a Repeater. I tried again, this time using a combination of Repeaters and normal Peashooters. We cleared the second attempt, albeit with the loss of a couple lawnmowers. Day 24 was another last stand level, and well, I'll let the footage speak for itself. And now we've reached day 25, the ancient Egypt boss fight. I beat the level with just Repeater for fun, even though I could have just played the level normally as per our conveyor level rules. I actually managed to beat it on my very first try this way. This is probably because I became so good at using Repeater in this level from grinding it for hours the last time in the 1 seed slot challenge video, where I beat it the exact same way with just Repeater. That's not to say I didn't get lucky with Zomboss's charge attacks. Pirate Seas brought a whole new level of difficulty, as seen in Day 1 where the swashbuckler zombies pressured our Repeaters and we had to tactically sacrifice a lawnmower to defeat some coneheads. To counter the faster pace of these levels, we had to employ a new strategy. By placing our Peashooters at the last possible second before the zombies get too close, we can stall the next wave of zombies from triggering, since a new wave only spawns when the current wave has experienced a certain amount of damage. This allows us to maximize the amount of time we have to collect sun from the sky to place more Peashooters when we need them. This This is a strategy essential to all PvZ challenge runs that don't allow sunflowers. This strategy pulled us through day 2 with one close call from a seagull zombie. Days 3 to 7 were all clean repeater and peashooter sweeps. Day 8 was the world's gargantua conveyor level, and days 9 to 11 were all repeater spam. Day 12 was the coconut cannon minigame, and day 13 was a produce sun level, so I brought sunflowers to meet the requirements as per our rules. After day 14 we unlocked Peashooter, our third usable plant. 3-peater is alright, but probably the worst option out of the Peashooters we have so far due to its large sun cost. Day 15 was one of the harder levels we've played so far, but making use of 3-peater and reg Peashooter we pulled through. Day 16 was really fun since I basically just spammed plant food on the endangered spring beans to beat the level. The next couple of days were more repeater spam. Day 19 was a produce sun level, so I brought sunflowers again. It actually turned out to be tough, even with the sunflowers though. We passed on the second attempt. Day 20 was yet another produce sun level. Why on earth did PopCap do 2 in a row? That's beyond me. This one was significantly easier than the last one though for some reason. And day 21 astounded me even more. Yet another produce sun level. What were they thinking, seriously? 3 in a row? Despite how mad I was about seeing that gimmick a third time in a row, I completely forgot to produce enough sun to pass the level. That's embarrassingly ironic. I remembered the second time around. Day 22 was extremely close. If the imp cannons had exploded even a second later, that lawnmower wouldn't have hit the imps that scattered in that lane, causing us to lose. But the repeater spam wins once again. Day 23 was a little tricky with the flowers, but some well-timed pea shooters and plant foods was more than enough to win. Day 24 though was a tough one. What was I meant to do about that? A lot of the level was just hoping for luck so that the swashbuckler and imp cannon RNG could land them in the water tiles more times than not. On about the 5th attempt we did it, largely by saving plant food for any imp cannons, as well as using plant food on the spring beans to get invincibility frames when seagulls started chewing them. Yes, it was that precise. We played day 25's Zomboss fight as normal since it's a conveyor as usual. I tried beating it with just 3-peater like I had with repeater for ancient Egypt, but the amount of zombies were too overwhelming for the whopping 5 3-peters the conveyor is allowed to give you. Like I said, the fun will be over quick as the difficulty of the challenge will soon spike. After an easy day 1, we unlocked our next pea shooter, Split Pea. Split Pea will be quite useful later on as it's our only way to beat certain gimmicks and zombies. Day 2 introduced the first of these gimmicky zombies, Prospector. Split Pea took care of them. Day 3 was easy using repeaters on minecarts. Day 4 was kind of funny because it was a conveyor level but only gave pea plants anyway. Day 5 was a breeze. Day 6 was the last stand level and we actually unlocked yet another pea shooter, Peapod. I didn't really expect that it would be that useful, but I would later be proved wrong, at least for this world. Wild West is already the most pea world. Day 7 was nothing special. Day 8 was a conveyor and day 9 was a given plants level. Day 10 introduced a whole new problem, chicken wrangler zombies. Since we don't have lightning reed or snapdragon, we're in a lot of trouble. The chickens caused a couple of losses, but we managed to fend them off using a strategy I like to call minecart spray and pray. We beat day 11 with just one cluster of pea pods. Day 12 was another conveyor. We swept day 13 with just split pea. Day 14 had heaps of chickens, but I found that using Peapod on the minecart took care of them since it shoots in bursts of 5 peas, as well as using reg pea shooters plant food to spray the chickens. For day 15, Peapod clutched up again. Can you see why I was wrong about this guy for Wild West? It just saves so much valuable sun when planted on minecarts. And it gives you so much wave stalling opportunities as you can pick and choose when to instantaneously kill zombies by moving minecarts. For day 16 I made most of the endangered walnut while using split peas to take care of prospectors and reg pea shooters for basics. Day 17 was close due to these flowers. And when I say close, I mean extremely close. But by using pea pods on minecarts again, we managed to narrowly survive. Day 18 was the last stand level that really showcased how vulnerable we are without lightning reed. Yeah, they just spam so many damn chicken wranglers. Look at all these chickens. There's nothing my repeaters could do. I restarted, this time with Peapod and, well, the same issue. I tried reg pea shooter and yeah. Out of desperation I tried with 3-peater and that ended up much the same. So now that I tried each pea shooter individually, I was kind of out of ideas. But I noticed that each time chickens killed me, it was because prospectors infiltrated my defenses, clearing the path for them. So I tried a mixture of 3-peater, split pea and reg pea shooter. 3-peater was who I used plant food on to spray the chickens, split peas protected the back lanes from the many prospectors, and the reg peashooters were just kinda there because I had extra sun. This combo managed to win. Day 19 was a pretty fun level because the gimmick was don't lose more than 2 plants, so I had to make sure I took down any prospector zombies before they could blast off to our side of the lawn. I did so by specifically using peashooter plant food on any lane with a prospector. A few slipped through though, and we ended up having 0 plants left to lose, which was pretty tense, but we managed. And yeah, looking back, I probably could have just used split pea. Day 20 was another not okay corral conveyor. Day 21 though started pretty grim. It was really finicky to stop the zombies crossing the flowers. On the last wave, 1 or 2 zombies would always slip through. I tried this level countless times, but would always lose this way. However, I eventually realized that when it came down to just 1 zombie, I could just shovel up the plants in other lanes for extra sun, and then spam peashooters in the lane to protect the flowers. I honestly kinda felt dumb for forgetting about this feature, especially since I've used it a lot in past challenge runs such as the 1 seed slot series. Day 22 was a given plants level. Day 23 was another tough flowers level that was, let's just say, trigger happy with chickens again. Surprisingly though, the solution was not overthinking it and just using reg peashooter, whose plant food was great for taking out pianists and dealing with chickens. I also used the final wave shovel strat at the end that I'd forgotten about before. Day 24 went surprisingly well with peashooter until the final wave where a chicken wrangler in every lane ruined everything. However, in my second attempt I barely managed to cling on until the final wave, then plant fooded all the walnuts to protect them from chickens, as well as slide them up and down the tracks to stop the bulls charging. I then let the lawnmowers carry me hard and did some more final wave peashooter digging and replacing. And just like that, we've beaten Wild West, since day 25 is just a conveyor belt boss fight. Day 1 was simple with repeater. In day 2 we used split peas to break the ice on the frozen repeaters. This would be so much easier if we could use hot potato, or any fire plant for that matter. Instead we have no efficient option to thaw out plants, which is obviously a problem in a world based around freezing plants. Day 3 was a conveyor level. In day 4 we experienced a massive difficulty spike due to the introduction of hunter zombies. You know how I said we don't really have anything to prevent our plants from freezing? All this guy does is freeze plants. For that reason, he's probably the most threatening zombie so far in this run. After a couple of losses, I eventually beat the level by using the cheaper reg peashooter so that losing one to the hunters wouldn't cost too much loss in sun. It was still really close. I also found split peas useful as I could hit the hunters from behind rather than in front so that they were out of a snowball range. Day 5 was another conveyor level. Day 6 turned out to be basically impossible. There's so much icy wind in this level, not to mention the constant barrage of hunter zombies. So, is that it? Is the run over? Well, no. Actually, it's far from over. That's because there's a peashooter that both thaws out other peashooters and is immune to the freezing winds itself. That's right, we're getting fire pea. The problem is, he costs 100 gems, and we have a grand total of 8. So we're gonna have to do some gem grinding. I did all my daily quests in the travel log, watched some ads, and played some Penny's Pursuit. I then registered my email to bring us up to 55 gems. I swear it used to be 100 gems. I mean, considering how they massacred the expansion epic quest gem reward, this is far from surprising. I had to wait until the next day to do all this again, except the email registration obviously, to bring us up to 100 gems, just enough to buy 5p. After buying him, we returned to the dreaded day 6, which I beat first try. Yeah, 5p is just that good in this world. Oh yeah, and the sunflowers were pre-planted by the way, no need to freak out in the comments. I blasted through day 7 with 5p as well. It's so satisfying not to have to worry about the freezing winds and hunter zombies anymore. Day 8 was another conveyor, the third in this world may I add. Day 9 introduced the Dodo Rider zombies. While flying through this level with 5p, I realized something very cursed. Where the hell do the imps go when the dodo dies? There's feathers, but what about the imp? Does the imp just disappear? Is there imp made of feathers too? Is it another dodo in an imp costume? We may never know. Day 10 was yet another conveyor. I'm starting to see why people point out how many conveyors there are in this world in particular. That's 40% conveyor levels so far. Day 11 proved to be the toughest level yet. This is partially due to the introduction of the blockhead zombie, a straight up tankier alternative to the buckethead, something we'll be seeing a lot more of in the future. The sheer amount of blockheads and bucketheads in this level were implemented to encourage the use of Charred Guard, as they filter into the bottom lane. However, since Charge Guard obviously isn't a Peashooter, what we actually get is a whole bunch of tanky zombies penetrating our defenses in the bottom lane until we become overwhelmed. Fire P couldn't handle this level on his own. As a result, we're gonna have to get a little more creative. I got a little worried that I would have to spend ages grinding to get more Peashooter plants, or dare I say, buy them from the shop. But I remembered a nifty little feature recently added to the game, Rent a Plant. Rent a Plant lets you watch an ad to try out a plant you haven't unlocked yet. Perfect for the situation we find ourselves in. I re-rolled the Rent a Plant button by restarting the level over and over until we started seeing some Peashooters. First up, we got Primal P. I thought to myself, surely Primal P has this level in the bag, right? Wrong. Although he got close and his knockback serves as a good alternative to that of the Charge Guard, he simply doesn't do enough damage to overcome the blockheads. I then tried renting Sling P, who made it about as far as Primal P. Electric Peashooter? Nope. Peanut? Not even close. Shadow P? No Moonflower to boost him. Useless. Defeated, I stared at the game over screen at 2 AM after hours of re-rolling rental plants and attempting to beat the level. I was genuinely about to give up then and there, but then I saw one last Peashooter appear on the plant rental. Goo Peashooter. I instantly knew Goo Peashooter could give the level a run for its money. You see, the main problem we've had with this level isn't the frozen winds, dodos, or hunters. It's the tanky regular zombies, especially the blockhead. Goo Peashooter is exactly what we need to counter these guys. This is because it poisons the zombies. In case you didn't know, the poison effect in Plants vs Zombies 2 pierces through armor, meaning it damages the zombies directly. This means the damage bypasses whatever inanimate object sits on its head, or in the case of the blockhead, encapsulates its whole head. Sure enough, Goo Peashooter shredded through the level by sweeping through the coneheads, bucketheads, and blockheads. I got so excited that I accidentally messed up my emulator window for a second. I'm so glad I stuck with this level and eventually found a solution. This advice could go for real life as well. Never give up, stay dedicated, and find solutions to the problems life throws at you. To be honest, I'm reading my script right now and I don't really know what I was trying to do here. It's literally a video about Plants vs Zombies. I think I was genuinely going insane over that level. Day 12 was a piece of cake and I beat it first try, which is kind of anticlimactic considering what we just went through. Day 13 was fine until, well, PopCap, what is this? I struggled quite a bit with this Gargantua. After about 15 attempts, I got really good at my Fire P placements and timings, but I always still lost on the final wave due to the Gargantua crossing the flowers. I noticed Fire P's plant food wasn't strong enough to take down the Garg, so I remembered that Split P exists. I simply put a Split P behind the Garg, used a plant food, and boom, problem solved. If I had have remembered how clutch Split P is, this level wouldn't have taken nearly as long as it did to beat. Day 14 was a locked and loaded level. Day 15 wasn't too bad, but it was too much for Fire P to handle on its own since I had to rent Primal P who took care of things nicely. Day 16 was a conveyor level. We'll let this one slide since it is a Gargantua fight. Day 17 was straightforward with Fire P. I wonder if PopCap likes conveyors. Days 19 and 20 were nothing out of the ordinary. Day 21 was another conveyor level. At this point, it's every second level. I mean, I'm not complaining since it reduces the amount of levels in this challenge, but why though? Day 22 introduced Weasel Zombies that Fire P and its plant food handled surprisingly well. Day 23 was just as easy, especially since there were a generous amount of pre-planted twin sunflowers that I thought out with Fire P. Day 24 was a produced sun level, so we were permitted to spam sunflowers everywhere to meet the sun goal. I don't even know what to say at this point. Day 26 was surprisingly easy. Again, this is probably because the pre-planted sun producers like Day 23. Day 27 was immediately a challenge. Fire P couldn't take out the troglodytes effectively while also keeping zombies away from the rotos. The main issue for all the Peashooters I tried were the Gargantuas. 3 of them, to be exact. And keeping them away from the endangered plants was a struggle to say the least. But then I remembered, what's the one Peashooter that can softlock Gargantuas by knocking them back indefinitely? Primal P. Day 28 was a last stand level where we just used brain dead Fire P spam to win. And as anticlimactic as that sounds, that was the last level in the challenge for Frostbite Cave since Day 29 is locked and loaded and Day 30 is the Zomboss fight, which is another, you guessed it, conveyor level. I think that'll do us for the first part of the challenge. We blasted through the first few levels with Repeater. Day 4 introduced excavator zombies, one of 2 zombies that everyone was giving me a panic attack about in the comments that we'll see in this episode. The other one will show up later on. Excavator zombie can actually be countered in a couple of ways, most notably using Split Pea. Split Pea can hit excavator from the back just like I did to your mum. The solution was to spam a lot of Split Peas whenever excavator showed up, until the final wave where we could let natural selection do its course. Day 5 was a conveyor level which we can skip. I already know I'm gonna get comments thinking I skipped levels or cheated, so for my sanity, please go and watch part 1 before commenting about any potential war crimes I may have committed in the making of this video. Day 6 was basically a repeat of day 4. In day 7 I realized 5P's plant food ability is another solid solution to excavators. Speaking of 5P, I actually misgendered her in the last video. To be honest, I don't really know how that works since it looks like a burning regular pea shooter. So does setting a plant on fire make it female? Actually, how is the 5P even alive if it really is a burning pea shooter? Oh, and parasol zombies. They don't really change much, do they? Day 8 and day 9 were skippable. Day 10 continued the pea shooter split pea combo. We didn't need to place a single split pea in day 11 because the level gave us enough plant food to scorch all the excavators with only 5P's plant food ability. We were also introduced to bug zombies, which can somehow be hit by 5P's plant food too, despite clearly being airborne. As per our rules, we could bring sunflowers for day 12 as well as a produce sun level, and day 13 was a conveyor. Day 14 was a locked and loaded level. Lost City really doesn't like normal levels, does it? Day 15 was straightforward, and day 16 was the Gargantua conveyor level. We got hard carried by lawnmowers in day 17, before facing yet another conveyor belt in day 18. The next 2 levels were simple with 5P. I knew this plant would be useful for Frostbite Caves, but I would have never expected it to be just as useful here. The combo of 5P and Split P definitely has this world under control. Day 21 and day 22 were both locked and loaded levels. Day 23 though was very difficult, a surprising difficulty spike after a world of easier levels. This was mostly because of the new zombie, Relic Hunter. The Relic Hunter is basically a swashbuckler with more than double the health and lands further down a lawn. Yikes. This guy is super tanky, so our 5Ps and Split Ps really struggled with him. However, after a few attempts, we managed to succeed through milking the sun tiles as much as possible by placing Split Ps on them. This also allowed them to shoot back at the Relic Hunters further down the lawn. Man, Split P is so clutch for this challenge. This is how day 24 starts. What the hell am I meant to do about that? After a few tries I managed to spam enough Split Peas to just take him down, but then everything else was too overwhelming since I blew all my sun already. Obviously this wasn't gonna work. I then rented every single pea shooter possible to absolutely no avail, but the closest plant we had was Primal Pea. I'm not joking when I say it took days of on and off grinding just to get the final wave of this level, let alone beat it. This was largely down to the 2 aspects of the game that we all know and love, RNG and luck. See, the Relic Hunters land on a lawn at a randomly selected tile between the columns 4 and 6. By retrying over and over again, we got some good RNG and they landed mostly in the 6th column. A large factor that was slowing down our progress was having to re-roll the rent a plant button and watch 10 minutes of ads every time to use Primal Pea. However, I realized I could just go to Ancient Egypt day 1 and farm the rental plant offers after beating the level to get enough seed packs to unlock him permanently. And what do you know, we beat the level quickly after doing this. And best of all, I don't have to lobotomize myself with mobile game ads again to use this guy. As for the winning a run of this level, all of our starts aligned. Good Relic Hunter RNG, good Primal P knockback RNG to keep the zombies away from the flowers, some quick thinking by placing 5Ps and Split Ps on the fly, and optimal plant food usage. And after digging up some plants for much needed sun at the end of the level, I spammed Primal and Split Ps for dear life, beating the hardest and most time-consuming level so far. Day 25 was a breeze with our newly unlocked Primal P, who actually has a secret ability. While his attacks can't damage excavators and its stun attack won't stun them, its knockback attack actually will knock them back, so while he can't take on excavators on his own, he still helps us manage them. In day 26 we used Primal P to stall the zombies until the final wave for the lawnmowers. Yes, we've gotten to this stage of the game now. I then bought garlic for $1.50, just so I could stop getting ads. Previously I just turned off Wi-Fi to stop ads, but I was preparing to live stream the challenge, so I needed Wi-Fi. I find it so funny that you can literally buy garlic for real money, that's crazy. As for day 27, the newly introduced turquoise skull zombies aren't usually that bad, but for this challenge they're brutal. They like to hide behind the excavators and wipe out our primal peas on the last wave. This level was tough, largely due to the aforementioned final wave with a turquoise skull in every lane. For this reason, I knew we had to save up all of our lawnmowers till the final wave, but this was easier said than done. I ended up saving 3 lawnmowers to the final wave, then dug up all the plants in lanes with lawnmowers and spammed primal pea in the remaining lanes. I then used split pea to attack the turquoise skulls from behind, where they were out of the skull range. Yes, split pea is the MVP once again. Day 28 was a locked and loaded level. In day 29 we used the same strategy as day 27. Stall out the lanes with lawnmowers until the final wave, then spam everything in the lanes with no lawnmowers left. A Gargantua actually spawned in a lane with no mower, which was unlucky, but Primal Pea is broken against Gargantuas, so it was fine. Apart from that, Split Pea hard carried this level too. Not only can it hit excavators and turquoise skulls from behind, but it can also hit bug zombies from both sides without being eaten, since they fly over him to get to his repeater side, instead of eating him and never seeing his repeater side like most zombies do. So you get so much value out of him. And that's not even all, he can also hit tents from behind to stop zombies spawning without being in danger of the spawn zombies themselves. This is something I used to win day 30, in addition to lawnmower carrying as usual. I was surprised by how good Split Pea was in this world. He counters basically all of the zombies here. And that's a wrap for Lost City, since day 31 is a locked and loaded level and day 32 is a conveyor zomboss fight. I gotta say, this world was challenging, but developing new strategies and unique ways to play the game to overcome this challenge made it really fun, and surprisingly, very possible, largely due to this Chernobyl-ass specimen of vegetation. I had a blast playing through this world again, reaffirming its status as one of my favorite worlds in the game. Before we move on to the next world, I'm gonna do the YouTuber thing and say, did you know that only 6% of you are actually subscribed? If you know anything about anything, you know that being in the top percentage of anything is good. Did you know that the top 6% of Americans own most of the wealth? Or that the top 6% of people think they could beat a grizzly bear in a fight? I mean, I'm no scientist, but do you see the connection there? So consider hitting that subscribe button and maybe one day you'll be able to take on a grizzly bear in your $10 million mansion, while also being able to keep up to date with my latest videos and next challenge episodes. Anyway, it's for future time. 5P soloed days 1 through 4. While I was streaming day 5, shout out to you legends who are awake at 3 AM to tune in, I decided to spice things up a little and let chat decide which peashooter I should use. And they chose Split Pea. We lost the first attempt because of how tanky the robo cones are. Look at this, we had more peas than the word snipper snapper and this thing still isn't dying. Utilizing power tiles more let us win though. In day 6, chat voted for me to beat the level with only peashooter, which wasn't actually that bad. We cleared it on the first attempt. Chat not only wanted me to beat day 7 with Peapod, but also beat it without stacking any of the Peapods. So yeah, I had to win with the equivalent of 125 Sun level 1 Peashooters. This was actually pretty tough and took a few attempts. With some conservative plant food usage and some lawnmower carriage though, it was possible. This lawn gives me nightmares though. Day 8 was the Gargantua conveyor fight. Day 9 was okay with Primal Pea, but still took a couple of attempts. At this point the shield zombies were getting super annoying, since as you can tell they block every pea that comes their way, making the surrounding zombies invincible. This single-handedly costed us a few attempts, and makes what should be a fairly simple world twice as hard. Day 10 introduced Discotron, which was pretty overwhelming for our Primal Peas. But once again Split Pea saves the day, being able to directly attack them from behind regardless of their spawns, in a similar fashion to the importers of Lost City. Day 11 was the last stand level and chat picked this setup. What were you expecting? Surprisingly though, the Reg P setup actually did really well. Day 12 was going okay until the Discotron spawned in way too many jetpacks. By saving my plant food for the Gargantua Prime and Discotrons on our second attempt, we succeeded. Again, 5P's plant food ability carried hard, especially since it can hit zombies in the air like Bug Zombie and now Jetpack Zombie. The football mechs were introduced in day 13 and were annoying as ever, but nothing our 5Ps and power tiles couldn't handle. Day 14 was a breeze, but at the end of the level, I stupidly placed down a bunch of plants even though I'd already won as a form of oblivious celebration, causing us to exceed the sun limit. Yeah, that wasn't one of my brightest moments. Day 15 was annoying because of how slow the Citrons shoot, but possible nonetheless. The next 3 days were all gimmick levels that we could skip. Day 19 was fine, day 20 was a sun production level, and day 21 was the last stand level, all going by with little difficulty. Day 22 and 23 were just as easy with our favorite two Peashooters. Day 24 was a sun bombs level and really showcased how broken this minigame is. If you don't explode any suns and just collect them, you can get so much sun. Only in sun bombs is this amount of overkill possible without even using a single sun producer, and that's far future done. It feels a little anticlimactic since the second half of this world doesn't really introduce much new stuff and isn't too bad in terms of difficulty, but our next world will definitely make up for that. So, this is it. The impossible world. You see, no sun falls from the sky and we can't use sun producers. However, there are sun gravestones on the lawn that drop 100 sun upon being destroyed. Only problem is we have no peashooters that are 75 sun or below, which is the amount we start the level with. So we have no way of getting sun. Challenge over, right? Right? Well, there is one plant we can use that can break gravestones that cost less than 75 sun. Appeasement. But koala, appeasement isn't a pea shooter. I see where you're coming from, but when you plant appeasement, he literally shoots peas. So he is a pea shooter. From the very beginning in part 1 when I laid out the rules, I said any closely related or pea-based plant is allowed. Appeasement clearly fits this criteria since it both shoots peas, is functionally and aesthetically pea-based, and even has a P in its name. Anyway, explanations aside, appeasement's peas allowed us to break the first sun gravestone, which gave us enough sun to plant a pea shooter, who could also break a sun gravestone, allowing us to plant another pea shooter, and so on. And believe it or not, breaking all the sun gravestones gave us enough sun for a pea shooter in every lane, making this level very possible. Obviously this wasn't enough to take down the final wave alone, but that's what lawnmowers are for. Unbeatable level beaten. Night 2 was much the same strategy as Night 1. The introduction of peasant bucket heads meant we had to be a lot more conservative with our plant food usage, and the final wave pea shooter digging is more important than ever with our limited sun. After feeling so proud of beating Nights 1 and 2, Night 3 was a massive shame. This one's impossible. The level has 0 sun gravestones. It's like they made this level just to mess with me. So all you can do is spam appeasements on the plant food gravestones to get plant food, to then instantly reload the appeasement, and repeat this until we lose or run out of plant food. I really wish we could have beat this one, but unfortunately it's impossible. But the run isn't over, obviously. We're only 3/4 through this video. So, in the spirit of Plants vs Zombies 2 experimentation, let's keep going, shall we, and see how much of the rest of the game is possible. Night 4 was a conveyor level. Night 5 started off seemingly impossible. Surprisingly, it wasn't the newly introduced jesters that caused this, since we could just place split peas behind them to hit them, without the peas being deflected. It was actually just the sheer lack of sun and the abundance of zombies. So basically everything else about this level. I was ready to give up when I thought of pea shooters that could hit Jester Zombie. I then thought of electric pea shooter, who, as it turns out, could actually hit them. The only problem is that electric pea shooter costs 200 sun, less than ideal for a Dark Ages level where our only source of sun is gravestones. The level only has about 5 sun gravestones. We would only be able to get 2 electric pea shooters down. There's no way we could actually... Yep, we actually did it. But that doesn't really do justice to the sheer amount of grinding and experimentation it took me to beat this level. Over a span of 2 IRL days, I slowly perfected the strategy. Here's a brief rundown. Literally as soon as the level starts, no more than a second in, instantly place an appeasement to break one of the lower sun gravestones and hope the pea shrapnel doesn't hit the gravestone in the second lane too much. I'll get to why in a second. Place a pea shooter to break the other sun gravestone in the bottom lanes. As soon as a pea shooter breaks the sun gravestone, dig it up for 50 sun refund. This gives you enough for 1 electric pea shooter. Now obviously if we only get 2 of these guys for the whole level, you want to place them in the second and fourth lanes for optimal splash damage in other lanes. Now when the top lane's basic zombie reaches about 4 tiles from the mower, place the electric pea in lane 2. Now you can see why we want the gravestone in this lane to have as much health as possible. So the electric pea can shoot at it so that the peas meant for that gravestone splash the zombie and sun gravestone above, which we need to do as much damage as possible to so it can break ASAP for 100 more sun. By now, if you were fast enough with the initial appeasement placement, it should reload, giving you just enough time to stop the bottom lane conehead. Sacrifice the middle 2 mowers, and if the top lane sun gravestone hasn't broken yet, then you might as well restart. Sacrifice more mowers and use appeasements to keep breaking sun gravestones until you can afford the second and final pea shooter. Now all lanes are covered and you just have to sit and watch the electric peas do their thing, with the occasional plant food to stop zombies getting past on the top and bottom lanes. And here comes the final wave, which is really just a test of how much plant food you've held on to, because the strategy here is to spam plant foods on the electric pea shooters and the appeasement seed packet to instantly reload it. And if you wiped out all the bucket heads except lane 2 since it has a mower, you just beat night 5 with only pea shooters. That was simple enough. I'm probably going to upload the full run on this level on my second channel, as well as some of the other tougher levels we'll face later. Day 6 was the last stand level and, well, there was no getting through that. Night 7 unfortunately suffered the same fate as Night 3. Since there are no sun gravestones, we can't plant anything except appeasements, deeming the level impossible. Night 8 was locked and loaded. Night 9 was a potion level, a gimmick I really like, even though it basically changes nothing except makes the zombies look actually scary. If you have a fear of clowns, look away now. However, this level was actually quite difficult. Essentially a repeat of Day 5 except with night zombies and potion boosts. Yay. Surprisingly though, it didn't really take me long to beat this level since the level gives so many sun gravestones that sun isn't really that big of an issue. This gave me some wiggle room to deal with the jesters by placing and digging up split peas without the fear of running out of sun. This let us use Peashooter, whose projectiles negate the potion speed boosts and hit through armor, shutting down the night zombies. That's not to say the level wasn't close though, with a similar ending to day 5 except with a lot of desperate shoveling and replanting. Night 10 was the Gargantua conveyor battle. Night 11 introduced the dreaded wizards, which made the whole level impossible. All we could do was mower launch the first one, but after that, it was over. Night 12 was tough since the level doesn't start with sun gravestones. However, nearly halfway through, they start to spawn in. Also, they only spawn in 4 tiles or further from the pushrooms. While the pushrooms can't hit them under normal circumstances outside their 3-tile range, some of their plant food shots actually reach the 4th tile for some reason, allowing us to break the gravestones slowly for more sun with the endangered pushrooms. So our pushrooms are defenseless for a while, but that was okay, we just had to use our plant food and appeasements wisely. And then I was rudely reminded of what happens when the jesters get too close to the pushrooms. And we're not even up to the wizards yet. Yes, this level also has wizards. However, they kind of helped us out in a way, since they turn our pushrooms to sheep, making them inedible to the zombies and preserving their lifespans. I got on this run where I was so close to winning, but literally one zombie ruins the whole thing. Spending hours grinding one level just for that to happen is the worst feeling, I swear. After another IRL day of trying this level, I wish I was joking, we eventually got on another promising run and this happened. I gotta say, this level is up there with Night 5 for the contender of absolute hardest level so far, but possible nonetheless. Night 13 had a conveyor, Night 14 made us produce sun, and Night 15 was the last stand level. All pretty basic. Night 16 waits until you have no lawnmowers left to give you some sun gravestones, at which point king zombies knight all the basics, before you can even get enough sun to have a peashooter in each lane. This one is also impossible, sadly. Night 17 started out nearly perfect because, well, look at that gravestone lineup. But actually beating the level was easier said than done. This one took a few hours, most of which we spent optimizing placements in the early game to get the most sun possible to set us up for later on when wizards, kings, and even gargantuas would show up. Most of our losses were due to the kings and wizards. These levels should serve as a reminder that even though we have premiums like electric peashooter, this challenge is still really hard. I mean, I had to spend at least 15 hours total perfecting placements and grinding between this level, Night 12, and Night 5. Anyways, on to Night 18, which was a locked and loaded level, a welcome break from the last level. Day 19, we're not gonna talk about this one. I'm 99% sure it's impossible. At this point I was just extremely exhausted from Dark Ages, and seeing this wasn't exactly helping. And day 20 was the Zomboss battle. Overall, Dark Ages was by far the most difficult world, and the world I poured the most time into, despite having the least amount of levels out of all of them. I'm quite impressed that only 5 levels were impossible. I, along with many of you guys, thought this world would be impossible from the very first night, but with some crafty strategies, we managed to scrape together quite a few W's. The first few days went exactly how you'd expect the first few levels of a world to go, except Dark Ages, which I was truly relieved to be done with. By the way, if the frame rate is looking really dicey, it's not your device, it's because I streamed these early levels and my internet was not having it. Day 4 saw a ramp up in difficulty. It took many attempts as the speediness of the zombies when the punk music played became apparent. However, Peashooter clutched up again since I found out its poison effect also negates this speed boost, much like it does to the potion boosted zombies in Dark Ages. Day 5 was extremely difficult in the 1 seed slot challenge, so I was prepared for the worst. But surprisingly, we won first try with Goopy. He's just that good. Day 6 was a conveyor, day 7 and 8 were just more Goopy spam. Day 9 was a locked and loaded level. Day 10 was another conveyor, and day 11 was a locked and loaded level again. In case you couldn't tell, we're back to the post-2014 worlds which love their gimmick levels. Days 12 and 13 were straightforward with Goopy. Day 14 was a locked and loaded level. Well, it's not really a level, it's more like an advertisement for Cactus. Days 15 through 20 were all either Goopy spam or conveyor belt levels. Day 21 turned out to be not as easy though. Gargantua's flower lines and breakdances are a pretty gnarly combo. I eventually found that the best solution was to use mower launch on the first Gargantua and spam appeasement boosted primal peas on the second Gargantua, saving my plant food for the pesky breakdancers along the way. Day 22 was another conveyor level. Day 23's arcade zombies were a bit troubling for Goopy, whose damage output can't handle the arcade machines which are immune to poison. However, our old friend Electric Peashooter came in handy because their shots can strike through all the 8-bit zombies, arcade machines, and arcade zombies themselves. But Electric Peashooter doesn't do enough damage to deal with tankier zombies, so we have to use a combination of both Goo Peashooter and Electric Peashooter. This strategy was super satisfying. Days 24 to 27 were all dominated by our new combo or were conveyor write-offs. Day 28 was more of a struggle. The boombox zombies became really annoying because of how many there were. In a normal run of the game, these guys are barely noticeable since you can just spam instants on them before they play their music. But in this run, we obviously can't do that. This causes the boomboxes to shut down any and all of our plants. However, with enough retries, we managed to win. It was very close though. Literally 3 Goopies and 2 Electric Peas were all it took to beat the whole of Day 29, full of arcades, gargantuas, and breakdances. I think that this is the best combo for this challenge. By Day 30, the devs really started to fall in love with gargantuas. But it's okay, we have lawnmowers and 2 overpowered Peashooters. Actually, make that 3. And that's it. Day 31 was a locked and loaded level, and Day 32 is the Zombots conveyor. I can't believe it, but the whole of Neon Mixtape Tour was possible. For our first world today, we entered Jurassic Marsh, the world that proves zombies somehow predate humans by 65 million years. I wonder how they survived out there with no human brains to eat. They must have eaten dinosaur brains or resorted to my personal favourite method of cuisine. Anyway, the first 7 levels were all either primal piece spam or conveyor levels with no issues. The dinosaurs become a lot less of a threat when you have horizontal trampoline shooter to bounce them back. The zombie tug-of-war dynamic between primal P and the dinosaurs in this world makes for some pretty fun levels. On Day 8, I had a break from Plants vs Zombies 2 and hopped on Lawnmowers vs Zombies 2. Day 9 was a given plants level. Yes, for the people at the back, I'm allowed to skip these, as well as conveyors and other levels that don't let us choose our own plants. Day 10 saw a difficulty spike that required us to summon Goo Peashooter. Goopy is a good choice for this world since it gets rid of hostile heads and bucket heads by piercing through their armor with poison. However, it doesn't do so well against pterodactyls, forcing us to dig it up every time a pterodactyl drops off a zombie. Using this strategy, we won without too many issues. Day 11 was much the same, but with more dependency on lawnmowers. So you know how I said our strategy relies on digging up our goopies? Well, this is what Day 12 tells us. As we entered the level, I was bracing for the worst, but it turns out that only 1 pterodactyl spawns throughout the whole level. Easy. Day 13 was another brain dead level with Goopy. We didn't even lose any lawnmowers. At this point I started thinking of ways I could tone down our Goopy usage, which I'll get to in just a second. This guy is just too OP. Day 14 was a given plants level, and we got to do one of the most satisfying things you can do in the whole game. We had a slight mishap in Day 15 due to a pterodactyl, but Splippy clutched up as always. This was followed by the Gargantua fight before Day 17, where Goopy carried again. Starting from now, I decided that we would only use Goopy when absolutely necessary and all else fails. This rule will also be followed in Big Wave Beach and Modern Day. Well, believe it or not, Goopy was already necessary in Day 18 since this level introduces a new dinosaur, T-Rex. T-Rexes speed up zombies significantly in their lane. Our only ways of slowing them down are Snowpea and Goopy, but Snowpea doesn't have the amount of damage output to handle the tanky bullies and fossil heads, so Goopy it is. Even with Goopy, this level was painful to say the least. I eventually resorted to memorizing where and when every T-Rex spawns so we could more strategically and sparingly place our Goopies. These T-Rexes are going to be a serious issue here on out. In Day 19's conveyor level, our setup was probably more secure than Area 51. Day 20 was a produced sun level with nothing out of the ordinary. In Day 21, the dinosaurs decided to troll us and spawn in all the lanes where we lost lawnmowers already. The newly introduced bully zombies are a slight problem for our Goopies since they're natty, unlike the bucketheads and fossil heads. We won after a couple of attempts. Day 22 was the last stand level where the lawnmowers recreated the extinction of the Neanderthals. In Day 23 I learned that the T-Rex's roar turns backwards zombies around. Isn't it funny how no matter how many times you've beaten the game, you still learn something new each time? Day 24 was another simple job for our one column of Goopies and lawnmowers. Seriously, how did this plant get past playtesting? Ankylosauruses were introduced in Day 25 and they're super annoying. How is this meant to be fair? We hit a major roadblock with this level. I tried using split pea after the zombies got yeeted, but then split pea would just get penetrated on both sides anyway. I then experienced some next level wizardry when an Ankylosaurus allowed this bully zombie to phase through the lawnmower. Add supernatural powers to the list of unfair abilities this thing has. We eventually made it to the final wave, but since, as I explained before, the bully zombies are on steroids, the goo Peashooters couldn't kill them in time. They don't really look like the receiving type either, so Split Pea couldn't do enough damage to them from behind. No matter how much I tried, I just couldn't shake this level. Unfortunately, that means this is the first level I couldn't beat in Jurassic Marsh. Day 26 was actually such a troll. Every time I tried to plant something, it got flung off the lawn. Yeah, so the mold colony ends on the tile where the Ankylosaurus shoots the zombie, so every time an Ankylosaurus flings a zombie, the Peashooter in that lane gets sent into orbit. To fix this issue, I memorized which lanes the Ankylosauruses spawned in, so I could plant my goo Peashooters one tile to the right, so they didn't get instantly sent to space. And they get eaten by the push zombies anyway. When I finally got on a promising run, a stray zombie decided to beat Usain Bolt's time in the 100-meter sprint. But it was okay because we managed to barely salvage 4 of our mowers to the last wave in the next run, so we only had to defend the bottom lane which had no Ankylosauruses. This level was only possible despite the mold colonies because they didn't spam Ankylosauruses in every lane like Day 25. Day 27 was another last stand level and it had a bunch of pterodactyls and Ankylosauruses. This sounds bad on paper, but the strategy was to literally just keep the zombies in the very first tile with a primal piece set up to make sure they were never in the side of the dinosaurs. Day 28 was surprisingly easy compared to the last few levels. We just had to be swift with goo pea placements, plant food usage, and final wave digging. You know, the usual. Day 29 was a given plants level. Day 30 brought a whole new issue for our goo pea shooters. Gargantuas. And I thought bullies were on steroids. Yeah, our goopies do basically no damage to these guys. But then I remembered that primal peas could stall them indefinitely. Despite the annoying bullies who are immune to primal peas knockback and aren't vulnerable to goopies poison, we managed to clear the level after a few attempts. As is typical, we had 0 lawnmowers to spare though. Day 31 was a locked and loaded level, and Day 32 was the Zombos fight, marking the end of Jurassic Marsh. I know I say this about a lot of worlds, but I'm pleasantly surprised with how much of this world turned out to be possible. 31 out of 32 levels to be exact. But the same will probably not be said about our next world, so let's find out. This is the world all of you were warning me about the most apart from Dark Ages. Why? Well, you can't pee in the pool. Casual Plants vs Zombies 1 reference. Seriously though, we have no lily pads. I thought about letting lily pads slide, but no. I care about the integrity of my YouTube content revolving around cartoon plants attacking cartoon zombies in a video game world too much for that to happen. Also, in this world I'll only use goo pea where absolutely necessary. In Jurassic Marsh we kind of had to use him because of the T-Rexes, but from here on out, he'll be on the bench for when we next need him. In Day 1 we used Primal Pea to breeze through the level. If you see flying zombies over the water, it's because of a weird visual glitch that happens when they get knocked back as they're emerging from the water. In Day 2, I mixed things up a little bit with just a regular Peashooter and appeasement, which surprisingly worked. Day 3 was a conveyor level featuring our favourite plant, followed by Day 4, which was another level possible with just reg Peashooter. Day 5 was another conveyor, then came Day 6, which introduced our first zombie obstacle of the world, Snorkel Zombie. As you could probably guess, they're really tricky for our straight shooting Peashooters to handle. We basically had to use our other Peashooters as meat shields to stall them out when they came out of the water. Other than that, we continued our Peashooter and appeasement streak, but the fact that the tide only gave us 2 columns meant the ending was really close. But this was nothing compared to Day 7, where we had 0 columns of land. This was our first completely submerged level. Even though we don't have any lily pads, we can use plant food on the pre-planted lily pads to generate more. I tried using reg Peashooter again, but it didn't work at all. So I tried primal pea and that didn't go too well either. So I finally opened the Pandora's box that is goo Peashooter and that didn't even work. I really thought this level would be impossible, thus starting the wave of impossible big wave beach levels, mostly because we still had no way to deal with the snorkel zombies. If only we could use a plant like walnut to force the snorkelers to come out of the water. Wait, Peanut finally makes his debut. Previously we had to use lily pads and pea shooters to tank for snorkelers so they would pop up from the water and get hit by a peas. But that costed a lot of sun and was just terrible in general since the snorkelers would only be vulnerable for a few seconds. However, the snorkelers are forced to pop up and be vulnerable for a long time as they chew the peanut, long enough for our goo pea shooters to shut them down efficiently. The only difficulty was finding enough lily pads to fit a goo pea and peanut in every lane, which we could do by giving plant food to lily pads in adjacent lanes. Day 8 was a walnut bowling at home level. Day 9 saw a huge step up in difficulty. Due to our limited sun combined with the fast pacing of the level, it was hard to justify using peanut in every lane. This is a problem because, well, snorkel zombies. Then I remembered Sling Pea. It should be able to hit snorkelers since it's a lobbing plant, right? Well, for whatever reason, Sling Pea can't actually target them. I don't know if that was intentional or an oversight by the developers, but it is what it is. I also tried Reg Peashooter and Peanut, but due to all the bucket heads, Goopy is just an absolute necessity. I went back to square one with Goopy and Peanut. To get around some lanes being vulnerable, I used Split Pea to hit stray zombies that made it to the moss columns. This strategy got us to the final wave, but we still lost. After a couple more hours of trying this strategy, we got to a run where things were playing out as usual. A couple of lanes had snorkelers and coneheads that passed onto the moss, but our appeasement was about to reload. So I dug up everything for sun, placed a split pea in both lanes, and the rest was history. That was really relieving since this level was on the verge of being impossible. Day 10 was a conveyor level. Day 11 really showcased how, even outside of snorkeler zombies, Peanut is actually kinda good in this world in general since it pairs well with Goopy. The Peanuts can hold off the low tide spawns and tanky zombies, letting the Goopies whittle them down. Isn't it funny how challenges like these can make the most irrelevant plants useful? Day 12 was another example of this. These levels also introduced surfer zombies who are just annoying since they block our peas with their surfboards. Day 13 was a produce sun level. Usually that's all I say for these levels and move on, but this level was really trippy. Not only did we have to produce sun, but we're also given only one line of lily pads on a map completely engulfed in water. So I used a strategy where I planted twin sunflowers on all the lily pads, and as other zombies came along, I dug them up and replanted them for Goopies or Peanuts. Using plant food, I made some extra lily pads to protect our only couple of remaining twin sunflowers, which would produce sun for the rest of the level. To bypass the limited space we have to work with, I also attached some pea vines to effectively fit 2 plants on 1 lily pad. Meeting the sun goal wasn't that bad because we only had to get 2000 sun. Day 14 was a locked and loaded level. Day 15 was this endangered plants level. Notice anything? That's right, no lily pads, so we can't protect the potato mines at all. I tried to beat this level a few times, but the surfer zombies were being really annoying, so I threw Primal Peashooter in to knock them back and away from the potato mines. Luckily, the tide doesn't go all the way to the shore for most of the level, so we can actually put Peanuts in front of the potato mines for a while. The last hurdle was the final wave where the low tide put zombies ridiculously close to the potato mines. However, I used some quick plant food, appeasement, and peanut reflexes to keep the zombies at bay. Day 16 was a conveyor level. Thank God for that. Day 17 introduced octo zombies. Luckily, only a few showed up, but you can see why they're such a problem. Firstly, we don't have lily pads, so when the octopi take up a land tile, it's really detrimental. And secondly, the octopi block heaps of our peas due to their very high health. Day 18 was a conveyor, which was lucky for me because imagine having to play this without lily pads. Day 19 was straightforward with Goopy and Peanut. I was trying to do the digging up strat against this octo zombie, but it had 1000 IQ, I swear. It outsmarted me the first time because I didn't know lily pads could also be octopused, and the second time it just straight up outplayed me. From day 20, the octo zombies started to become a massive problem, simply because there were way more of them. On top of that, we only had a whopping 1 column of land to work with. I tried electric Peashooter since its peas could travel through octopi and surfboards. That didn't really work out though. I then tried Fire Pea purely for his plant food ability. By using Mower Launch on the first octo zombie, placing fire peas and using plant food on them for subsequent octo zombies, and using the shovel strat to block octopi from spawning throughout the level, I managed to do a lot better. On my first attempt in doing this, we got to the final wave, but this strategy was far from perfect, forcing us to waste a lot of sun. It took a lot of attempts to get the digging up timing, since a lot of the octo zombies throw an octopus like 5 milliseconds after entering the screen, giving you no time to shovel up the plant. After getting nowhere from hours of attempts, I dropped Fire Pea and thought of alternative ways to overpower the hordes of zombies. I gave Peavine a chance since it can squeeze in on the same tile as another Peashooter, giving us a compact setup to make use of our 1 column of land. Surprisingly, this strategy was a good alternative to Goo Peashooter, as damage wasn't really a problem because it gives appeasement the effect of a Doom Shroom from Plants vs Zombies 1. And here's how the duo handled the Gargantua at the end of the level. Yeah, Peavine deserves a raise. We won even though I allowed some octopi to slip simply due to how much damage these guys do and how cheap they are. Day 21 was yet another conveyor, the calm before the storm, as day 22 introduced Fisherman Zombie. As is typical with levels that introduce new zombies, this level wasn't that bad because they go easy on us. Octo Zombie is still by far the worst of the two since it can instantly destroy our Peashooters and leave behind Trump's border wall in the form of unassuming seafood, while Fisherman just kind of moves stuff around. But as I said earlier, this was just Fisherman's debut level. He gets used in far more devious ways later on. Another thing to note about Fisherman Zombies is that they can now reel in lily pads too, but only when they're on water. I don't know why they changed this, but that's a slight nerf to him, so I'm not going to complain. Okay, take back everything I said about fishermen. In day 23, the very next level, the devious fishing activities begin. The problem is that you have to worry about both octo-zombies and fisherman zombies hiding behind the other zombies. Octo-zombie walks way slower than the rest, and fisherman sits at the back, so you can only really deal with them via the 3 endangered banana launchers, which isn't enough at all. So you end up having to either let octopi slide or let your bananas slide. After about 5 attempts, I got on this really close run, but this happened. I'm not gonna lie, that loss made me really salty. I can see why people hate these fishermen. After some more grinding, I managed to get on an equally promising run, and what do you know, the exact same thing was about to happen. I swear, if I ever come across this one fisherman, things aren't gonna end well for him. But just as its hook was about to land on the banana launcher, something completely unthinkable happened. Octo-zombie actually saved my life. Octo-zombie of all zombies. Octopi can't be hooked, which is kind of ironic since sea creatures can't be fished, but mutated plants can. This caused the fisherman's hook to phase through the now entangled banana launcher and grab the goo peashooter. This is probably going to be another one of those levels I upload to the second channel, which is where I put bonus content and other random stuff. I've been using it to upload full levels in this challenge that are so tough that they deserve to be seen in full. Day 24 was Walnut Bowling at Home Part 2. Day 25 started out like an actual nightmare. There's so many octo-zombies and fishermen that it's basically impossible to get anything down on the lawn. We had to use all 5 of our lawnmowers just to get to the second last wave, not even the final wave, just for like 10 more fishermen, octo-zombies, and even gargantuas to start spawning. No matter which strategy we tried, this level just wasn't budging. If you guys want to try this one for yourselves, be my guest. Who knows, maybe one of you will be able to do it, but I definitely can't. Honestly, I was surprised and impressed that this was the first impossible level in Big Wave Beach though. Who would have thought that without lily pads or sunflowers, we would make it to day 25 in Big Wave Beach with just Peashooter variants. That's actually crazy. Day 26 was a very welcome conveyor level. On the other hand, day 27's lawn made me want to peashoot myself. Surely it can't get we can only use 2 plants. Yeah, so Big Wave Beach has these levels where it's mostly given plants. This is a kind of a grey area in our rules because given plants levels can be skipped, but are these given plants levels? I'm not going to count them as given plants levels personally by virtue of the fact that I usually only use a couple of peashooters per level anyway. Either way, I think the writing's on the wall for this one. Just like day 25, we can only make it about 3/4 through the level before everything just went to crap. This is made worse by octo-zombies, since we can't even do the shovel strat to stop the octopi because of the lily pads beneath, which we can't dig up for obvious reasons. After seeing this when booting up day 28, I instantly had Vietnam flashbacks. I'm pretty sure this is that one level that everyone hates, and rightfully so. Hell, I even remembered how bad it was just by looking at one sentence. Losing less than 5 plants with a zombie lineup like this is just unfair. But hey, at least we have more than 2 seed slots this time. But it doesn't really matter though, because I'm pretty certain this one is impossible. You know how it says don't lose 5 plants? Well, it really means don't lose 3 plants, because lily pads count as plants too. And did I mention how basically every zombie in this world deletes your plants? Day 29 was a last stand level. Despite being severely handicapped once again by the non-existent shoreline and lack of lily pads, we managed to spend all of our sun by cramming a 3-peater and pea vine on every lily pad. This was a pretty deadly combo, especially with appeasement, which caused absolute carnage that the UN probably wouldn't approve of. After 3 impossible levels, it was nice to have a straightforward level like that. My sanity was very grateful. But day 30 threw all of that out the window. It was like day 28 on steroids. I could yap all day telling you how this was impossible, so instead I'll just show you. And that's Big Wave Beach done, since, as usual, the last couple of levels of the world are skippable. Namely, day 31 since it's locked and loaded, and day 32 since it's a Zomboss conveyor fight. I'm glad this world is over. Subscribe if you hate Octo-Zombie. Like I did for the other worlds, I'll see how long I can go without Goopy before the withdrawal symptoms become too much. In day 21, we found yet another use for Split Pea in this challenge, that being portals. Placing a sneaky split pea behind a portal can stack up damage on common portal threats, including mechs and barrel rollers. Apart from that, Reg Peashooter did the job. Day 2 did not wait to taunt us with the world we were just tortured in. This one was surprisingly tough for so early on. Not even Peavine could help us, or Primal Pea. I ended up opting for Snow Pea since it could freeze a lot of the Egyptian threats in this level like explorers and camels. Of course, on the final wave, the Gargantua spawned in the one lane we didn't have a mower in. Also, side note, I did not know Modern Day already had Gargantua was in the second level. That is absurd. but it wasn't a problem because our snow peas froze him while he got absolutely annihilated by our pea vine boosted split peas. Day 3 was a conveyor as per. Day 4 and 5 were oddly easier than the first 2 levels. Primal Pea dealt with them nicely. Day 6 was a produce sun level. It also reintroduces some of our old friends from Dark Ages, like Jester and Wizard. That forced us to summon Electric Peashooter, who made the level quite doable while also flaring up my Dark Ages Day 5 PTSD. Day 7 is a level straight from hell. Look at this lawn. You have octo zombies, you have jesters, you have breakdancers pushing gargantuas. Whoever designed this level committed a crime against humanity. I tried using P-Vine and Peashooter. I thought we were going fine until a bunch of octo zombies spawned on the final wave and wiped the whole lawn clean of plants. I made a mental note to save my appeasement for the final wave next time. After a whole afternoon of grinding, I eventually managed to find the right appeasement timings to ensure I had one on the final wave. When I did this, we got this extremely close run. All I had to do was place that split pea not even a second earlier, but instead I moved my mouse like I was in a vegetative state, so I had to do the whole level again. But after I switched off cripple mode, we won. Day 8 was a begooled level, and Day 9 was locked and loaded level. Day 10 brought out all of the threats from Frostbite Caves and Far Future. Hunter zombies forced us to use Fire Pea, while shield zombies and football mechs necessitated Fire Pea's plant food ability too. The level had an equally chaotic finish, where we used all 5 lawnmowers, had to dig up every plant on the lawn fixture sun, and then hope that we could place enough split peas to kill the Gargantua Prime in time. I hate that rhymed. Things were not looking great, but the split peas just defeated it in time. Day 11 was quite simple. Place fire peas throughout the level and use plant foods from mechs and newspapers, then on the final wave dig up all the fire peas and spam primal peas in any lanes where lawnmowers were lost. There was a prospector and football mech in the bottom lane, so I placed a peanut at the back to hold off the prospector while the primal peas trapped the mech until it was defeated. Day 12 contained dragon imps, excavator zombies, and parasol zombies. This meant that we couldn't use fire pea, primal pea, or most of our other pea shooters for that matter. Our only pea shooter who could hit all 3 of these zombies was electric pea shooter. Thankfully, due to how busted this plan is, we beat the level first try. Day 13 was another begooled level, followed by another locked and loaded level. We initially tried day 15 with primal pea, but the abundance of imp cannons and prospectors made them useless. Instead, I switched to a strategy with snow pea, which worked out really well. This was partially down to how lucky I got with the freezing projectiles. This snow pea shot like 4 of them in a row, right on the zombies, eating one of the endangered primal walnuts. Without that kind of luck, that walnut would have definitely been eaten. The last wave was obliterated by the appeasement boosted pea vines. I don't even know what makes pea vines do essentially infinite damage when boosted by appeasement. Maybe you could explain that in the comments, but I mean, I'm not complaining about it. Day 16 was a gargantua conveyor level, and day 17 was pretty simple with fire pea. Day 18 was a little tougher due to balloon zombies and bull zombies, but primal pea and pea vine shredded the level, especially the final wave due to appeasement. Day 19 was a conveyor level where I finally got to try out the invincible escape route glitch all of you were telling me about in the best and worst premium plants video, which you should totally watch by the way. It was pretty funny seeing all the zombies stacking on the one escape route and being stuck forever. Also, at the end of the level we finally got to get sweet revenge on the stupid octo zombies. Day 20 was another pretty basic level with primal pea and pea vine, but we only just survived with all our lawnmowers used up. Day 21 introduced all stars, who we basically have to use reg peashooters as sacrifices for since they're the cheapest of our plants. The level was going okay until the final wave where a bunch of portals spawn, which caught me off guard because portals are so underused in this world that I'd forgotten they even existed to begin with. Even with our stronger plants such as Peavine, the constant barrage of balloons, portals, football zombies was making this one look bleak. The same thing would happen in every attempt. Blow on my lawnmowers, then pay the consequences in the final wave. But what caused us to lose mowers? Most of the time it was tanky threats like newspaper zombie and football zombie. At this point I had a pretty crazy idea. What about snap pea? I mean, it stops football zombies dead in their tracks without needing to sacrifice a Peashooters cannon fodder. It also gets rid of newspapers before they enter method tweaking mode. Surprisingly, on our first attempt with snap pea, we managed to make it well into the final wave, where we narrowly lost to a balloon zombie. You see, that's a problem here. Snap pea can't burrow balloons since they're in the air, so we have to mostly rely on split peas or lawnmowers to deal with them. I never noticed how snap pea's plant food ability is actually pretty good. As you can see in this clip, it basically cleared the whole lawn of newspapers and footballs. Clearly the strategy was working, but my geriatric reaction times returned every time we got to the final wave when I had to place split peas quickly for this one balloon zombie. However, after about 10 tries, I managed to clutch up and place enough split peas to just get the pesky mongrel. This level was yet another example of how this challenge has exposed me personally to plants I would have never used otherwise. Day 22 was another begooled level, which was oddly the easiest one so far. In day 23, I decided to give snap pea another shot, and he did really well again, until a snorkeler just straight up walked through him. Unlike any other plant apparently, he becomes invisible rather than invincible during his plant food ability. This level turned out to be like day 21, but with gargantuas at the end of the level. Even reaching the last wave was a challenge in itself because of the octo zombies. There were some glimmers of hope though, such as this run where we got to the final wave and took out all the zombies except one gargantua. I used some quick thinking to place a snow pea to freeze it, hoping for our appeasement to reload so we could power up our split peas, but we're just seconds too late. After hours of attempting this level and losing to these two deep sea gargantuas in the final wave, an eerily similar situation to Wolfie's Big Wave Beach Day 16 experience.
I have no answer for these gargantuas. These two again!
I decided to just rethink my strategy. I went with pea vines on their own because every time I got an appeasement, it just deleted the whole screen of zombies. Sure enough, on the first try I beat the level, and as you can see this combo solved any and all gargantua issues. Then I let Snap Pea eat the leftover seafood. Sorry Snap Pea, but I think you've had your 15 minutes of fame. Day 24 was fairly straightforward and uneventful, as was the following conveyor level. As for day 26, the early and middle stages were okay, but as is common with these modern day levels, the final wave was absolute torture. So many discotrons. Roll the death montage. Eventually I got on a really promising run, bar the fact that Gargantua lived. If all else, this proved to me that after a day of grinding this level, it might be possible. After some deep thinking, I realized I'm never beating this level unless I save the lawnmowers for the final wave. So after some good snow pea freezing RNG and perfected appeasement and pea vine timings, I managed to salvage most of the lawnmowers. But most importantly, I saved a mower in both lanes the Gargantua spawned on in the final wave. Level complete. This was definitely the hardest level modern day has thrown at us, and yet still no goopy used. Can we beat the rest of the world without goopy too? Let's find out. Day 27 was the last Begooled level. I really liked these levels. They almost serve as rest breaks from the chaos that is modern day, while also being neat throwbacks to the first game. Day 28 was a Produce Sun level, so we used Snow Pea to slow the zombies down so we could build up sun safely. After day 26, I was surprised to beat day 29 on the first attempt with the same strategy. I honestly felt bad for this Gargantua, that did not look like a painless death. Day 30 was like PopCap playing some kind of cruel joke. This is not okay. Unless they add Exodia P to Plants vs Zombies 2, there is no way this level is possible. And in a very anticlimactic fashion, day 31 was super easy. The only threat was Jester Zombie, who Split Pea took care of. Although this level wasn't a very strong finish, I like that we got to end on the return of Split Pea, who is by far my favourite Peashooter to use in this challenge. The next 3 levels were all the conveyor Zomboss fights, marking the end of this challenge. This also means that we got through the whole of modern day without Goopy, which is something I'll be sure to bring up in my next job interview. Something I also found pretty interesting is that your poll votes predicted the difficulty and possibility of the levels for each of the worlds in this video pretty well. Before I announce the final results of this challenge, I just want to quickly say something I don't get to say enough, which is just thank you. Thank you guys so much for all the support on all of my videos in this series as well. Part 1 already has 250,000 views, which is just amazing. If you want to see more challenge videos like this, drop a like on this video. We're also about to hit 40,000 subscribers, which is just insane. I have a lot of bangers cooking up right now, so subscribe to make sure you don't miss them. With that out of the way, the results are in. For all the worlds up to Dark Ages, all of the levels were completely possible. In Dark Ages, 15 out of 20 levels were possible. For Neon Mixtape Tour, all 32 levels were possible. Jurassic Mosh had 1 impossible level, leaving 31 out of 32, while Big Wave Beach had 28 out of 32 levels possible, because of 4 impossible levels. And Modern Day had 1 impossible level, totaling to 33 out of 34 possible levels. This totals to 11 impossible levels across the whole game, which is an average of about 1 per world, amounting to a final result of, drumroll please, 301 out of 312 levels possible, or 96% of the game. I'll definitely take that.